Hi everybody, welcome back to the bindery. Thanks for joining me today. We're going to be continuing on our movie prop replica of The Notebook from the film of the same name, The Notebook. Last time, in the last video, we sewed up the text block for the book and we made the covers. And so today what we're going to be doing is lining the spine, attaching the ribbon bookmark, and then we'll get started on building the case. Now quickly, before I glue up the spine, I just want to measure the dimensions of the text block so that I can make the spine strip. The width of the text block at the spine, including the covers, is about 22 centimeters. But the thickness of the text block itself is about 18. So I'll just make note of that measurement and I'll use that later on. To begin, I want to attach the bookmark to the spine of the book and then line it with a fabric called mull. Mull is just a thin, gauzy type fabric that's been stiffened so it's easier to handle, and it just provides a little bit of extra strength and support to the spine of the book. This really just holds the book steady and upright while I'm working on the spine. You can do the same thing with a couple of bricks. The adhesive I'm using for this operation is just straight PVA glue, and the ribbon that I'm using is just a standard synthetic ribbon that you can get from the fabric store. I've cut a length that's about twice the length of the book. It's always better to have a little bit too much. You don't want to finish your book and realize that the bookmark is too short. So I'll begin just by applying some glue at the head of the book. And I'm just going to place the ribbon centered on the spine, directly in that adhesive. I'll add a little bit more to the back to make sure that it soaks in. I put the ribbon bookmark on first so that when I apply the mull over top, it'll act as another layer to hold it firmly in place. And using a bone folder, I'm just going to press that down into place gently. Next, I'll cut my piece of mull to length, slightly shorter than the length of the text block. And this piece is a little bit wider than what I need. I think I'm going to just cut down the width a little bit. This particular mull I obtained from an auction lot of bookbinding supplies. It comes on a very large roll. I'm not certain where to obtain exactly this type of mull. So that's a good size. Now I'm just going to glue out the entire spine. The mull also acts to reinforce the joints of the covers, so there's a little bit of added strength at that flex point where the covers bend. I'm going to add more glue right over top of the mull to make sure that it's firmly attached. I like to use my finger just to press everything down, and then some added pressure with the bone folder to make everything secure. And the last step in lining the spine will be to cover it with some thin, strong paper. This is a 60 GSM layout bond paper. So I'll just cut a piece that's the length of the text block and twice as wide. So next I'll just fold this in half. And then I'll attach that, lining it up with the edge of the book block. And just press that down firmly. I can use a bone folder to make sure I get full adhesion on the back of the book. Then I'll open that up and add a layer of glue on the inside so that I have a double layer of paper on the back. Now I'll just set that aside to dry for 10 or 20 minutes. So while that's drying, I'm going to make the spine strip. Again, I've got a piece of gray board, the same thickness as the covers, and the grain direction is running from top to bottom. I'll just lay out my measurement of 18 millimeters that I took from the spine of the text block. And I'll carefully cut a strip, making sure not to move my ruler. So that's had plenty of time to dry now, and I'll move on to making the case. So the first thing that I want to do in making the case is to actually trim down these covers. I made them to the full width of the finished book, but of course they need to be a little bit smaller than that. This is where my scale printout of the book is going to come in really handy, because I can take an actual measurement directly from it. If I place my rough cover over top, you can see that the cover board actually ends at about this location. That allows space for the hinge for the cover to fold back, and the thickness of the spine stiffener as well, which will be approximately here in the finished book. This distance is about 8 millimeters, and to add a little bit extra, I'll take off an extra millimeter. So I'm going to trim 9 millimeters off of the edge of the boards. I decided I'll use one of my cutting mats and spare my workbench top a little bit. Now before I go too much farther, I'll also tuck in this ribbon bookmark. The way I like to do that is to open up the book approximately to the middle, and I'll lay the ribbon inside, leaving a generous loop at the top, and close the book, and then I'll pull down just to bring the top of the ribbon down flush with the head of the book. Then I'll open it again, slightly further over, bring the ribbon up on the inside, and lay it flat in there. That keeps it out of the way while we're working on it. The next step is to join the covers and the spine stiffener into what will ultimately be the case. To make sure that I have everything in the correct orientation, I'll make a paper template. Because the spine stiffener will be on the inside, I'm first going to fold my paper template around the spine stiffener. And I'll place that against the spine of the book. Next, I'll carefully place the cover boards in the position where I want them, making sure that I have an even square around the edges. When I'm happy with that, I'll place that flat on the bench and place the other cover on top. Then using my square, I'll align the two covers and then mark the position on the template. To attach the covers and spine stiffener, I'm just going to use some thin craft paper. I'll cut a strip that's 10 centimeters wide and as high as the boards. Because I'm going to be attaching the spine stiffener and the cover boards to opposite sides of this craft paper, I'll first lay out the position of the spine stiffener. And as I did with the template, I'm going to crease that along the edges. And then turning it over, and using my paper template, I'll transfer the position of the boards onto the back of the spine strip. These lines will show me exactly where to glue down the covers. going to assemble the parts using PVA glue. I'll apply the glue to the flat side of the spine stiffener. The beveled edge will be against the spine of the book. And I'll position that directly between the layout lines that I made earlier. This will be against the outer spine of the book when it's finished, so I want to make sure to work out any lumps or bumps. Now working on the opposite side, I'll apply glue up to the layout line I made. I'll carefully apply the cover right to the line. I'll repeat that step on the other side. When applying the back cover, I'm going to use a straight edge against the front cover. And I'll line the back cover up along the layout line and the straight edge to ensure correct orientation. And finally, I'll cover that with some weight to let it dry. Now it's time to move on to covering the case with cloth. I'm going to be using this blue book cloth. It's fabric on one side and paper reinforced on the back to keep the glue from squeezing through to the front. And I think the color is a good match to that which is used on the book in the film. Having the case assembled like this makes cutting the cloth to cover it very easy. It's a simple matter of laying the case onto the cloth and then leaving a perimeter to do the turn-ins. Look at me trying to be right-handed and making a sloppy cut. But that's okay because I'm going to trim these to final width when I do the glue up. I've turned the lights on because of the thunderstorm rolling through, so hopefully you can see a little bit better. I'm going to use my 20mm layout strip to make sure that I've got the case oriented where I want it on the cloth. And then I'll mark the perimeter so I know where to apply the glue. My glue is a PVA methylcellulose mix, 1:1 ratio. Hopefully the lights stay on with all that thunder and lightning. I want to be certain to get the cloth adhered well down into the hinge areas. So I'm going to first begin by laying the spine down. I'm going to flip the whole thing over. And using my bone folder, I'll work the cloth down into those shoulders first. This is where having a PVA methyl cell mix really comes in handy. I can lift things up and reposition if I need to. To make sure that those shoulders set well, I've cut a couple of strips of board the same thickness as those hinges. I'm going to put that under some weight. I'm not going to use the press because the extreme pressure could squeeze the glue up through the cloth and ruin the whole cover. With that dry, it's time to work on the turn-ins. I'll use my 20mm gauge to trim the edges. Next, I'll just miter off these corners. I'm just doing this by eye. These corners will eventually be covered with leather, so I do want to keep them neat, but they don't have to be perfect. I'll lay down some waste paper, and now we can glue out the turn-ins. I like to work on the corner of the bench to turn these in, just using the heel of my hand to fold it up. Press it firmly in place. And here at the spine it needs a special attention, so I like to work that down with a bone folder. I'm just going to leave these corners as they are right now because I'm going to be covering them over with leather. As soon as the glue is dry, I'll trim away the excess so I'm just left with a radius. With those turn-ins dry, I can now move on to trimming the corners. At this point, I like to push the boards together to really set the lines of that hinge. Now with the cloth and the cover, we can test the fit. Yeah, that's looking really good. The squares look good all the way around, and already it has the feel of what you would think the book from the film would be like. So that'll be all for today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Next time we'll work on tooling the lines on the covers, paring the leather for the corners, applying those, and hopefully we'll get to finishing the book. So as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to get notifications of the next video. Until then, we'll see you next time.